Most men get ignored because they express too much. In this video, you'll learn the exact psychological reason why women obsess over men who stay silent, and how Freud's forgotten insight can flip attraction in your favor. If you've ever felt like being honest pushes her away, this will explain why. She came in every Thursday, same chair, same perfume, a soft floral musk that lingered long after she left. She was in her late 20s, intelligent, guarded, her eyes always searching for something unspoken. For the first few sessions, she barely talked, just observed him, her therapist, Dr. Keller. He was older, quiet, almost unsettlingly so. He never interrupted, rarely smiled. And when she cried, he said nothing, just sat there, a stillness that felt like judgment, or maybe invitation. By week 5, she was confessing things she'd never told anyone, affairs, fantasies, the way she sometimes wanted to be punished. She called him cold, distant, said he didn't care. She stormed out once, came back the next week. She never missed a session. And over time, something strange happened. She stopped dating. She started dressing more carefully on Thursdays. Once, she left behind a handwritten poem. No explanation, just left it there on his desk. Her journals began to mention him, not by name, but by presence. The shadow in the room who makes me feel alive. Her obsession deepened until it became a kind of madness. She confessed she'd driven past his house, that she imagined him watching her when she undressed, that no man ever made her feel the way he did, and he hadn't touched her, hadn't even smiled at her. Why? Why would a woman fall in love desperately, compulsively with a man who gave her nothing? That's the paradox Freud called the empty chair. The hunger not for fulfillment, but for tension. Women, especially those with unresolved attachment wounds, aren't drawn to affection. They're drawn to the abyss between what they give and what they can't receive. It's not the kiss that haunts them. It's the space just before the kiss. The unclaimed tension, the mystery. And the more he held back, the more she leaned in. Not because she was weak, but because her psyche recognized the pattern. The unmet need, the ancient wound. Dr. Keller, of course, knew this. He'd seen it before. Knew that if he leaned in, even a little, the spell would break. That the fantasy she built around his silence would collapse under the weight of reality. So he remained silent, still, and in that silence, she projected everything she longed for. That's the trick Freud understood. That desire doesn't grow in response to availability. It grows in response to distance. And silence, when used correctly, becomes a mirror, a space where another person sees what they want to see, what they need to believe. The more a woman fills that space, the more she becomes addicted to it, not to him, to the story she wrote around him, to the part of herself that finally felt awakened, just by being unmet. And when that emotional loop is set in motion, logic doesn't matter anymore, because obsession isn't born from connection, it's born from interruption, from doors half opened, from sentences unfinished, from hands that don't reach back. You've been told to express yourself, to be clear, honest, vulnerable, but you weren't told the rest, that in certain moments, silence is not absence, it's amplification. That mystery isn't deception, it's seduction. Dr. Keller never told her what he meant, never explained his stillness. He didn't have to, because the human mind, especially the feminine unconscious, is wired not for clarity, but for meaning. And where clarity ends, meaning begins, even if that meaning was never real. This isn't a trick, it's a mirror. A woman will chase what doesn't chase her, not because she's irrational, but because somewhere in her story, she was trained to equate longing with love. And that is where we begin. Freud believed that repression wasn't just a defense mechanism, it was a blueprint, a quiet architect of obsession. He wrote, "What we repress does not vanish, it waits, and it returns as fate." To understand why women, and indeed all people, become obsessed with the ones who don't return their gaze, you must understand what the unconscious wants, not what it says it wants, what it truly craves, beneath language, beneath culture. Freud called this the compulsion to repeat, a psychological gravity that pulls people back into situations that resemble their earliest wounds, in the unconscious hope that this time they'll get it right. Now imagine a woman whose father was emotionally absent. She never heard, "I'm proud of you," never felt fully seen. He was there perhaps, in the room, in the car, in the home, but not with her. And so she learned to perform, to overextend, to seduce with emotion, hoping, always hoping, that if she just tried a little harder, he'd notice. Now fast forward, she's grown, intelligent, accomplished. She knows what she wants, at least on paper. A kind, stable man, attentive, affectionate. She meets him and feels nothing. Then she meets someone else. He's distant, vague. He listens, but doesn't react. She walks away from their first meeting and can't stop thinking about him. Why? Because her unconscious recognizes the pattern. He's not absent, he's familiar. And now, that part of her that was never held as a child sees a chance to win. If she can just make him want her, she'll finally rewrite the story. She'll transform absence into affection, cold into warmth. It's not about him, it's about history. But here's the twist Freud knew. The unconscious doesn't want resolution, it wants repetition. It wants the wound to stay open, because that's where identity lives. To heal it would mean to lose the self that was built around it, and this is where strategic silence becomes dangerous. Not because it manipulates, but because it activates. When a man offers just enough presence to stir hope, but not enough to satisfy it, he becomes the perfect projection screen. Jung, Freud's one-time heir and rival, described this as anima projection, the process by which a woman unconsciously places her deepest desires, fears, and ideals onto a man, not because of who he is, but because of what he represents. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But what he didn't say out loud was this: if one substance is empty, like silence, the other does all the reacting. The woman transforms herself to fit the mystery. She creates a narrative. She becomes enchanted. This is why the man who over-explains dies in her mind, because once the mystery is gone, so is the projection. And once the projection dies, so does the obsession. Evolution backs this up. Across millennia, women developed psychological mechanisms to detect male value, not just through resources or strength, but through availability. A man who withholds signals selectivity, and selectivity implies value. If he's not eager, he must have options. If he doesn't chase, he must be chased. It's not shallow, it's adaptive, because in ancestral environments, men who spread themselves too thin were unreliable, but men who resisted, who created emotional scarcity, were chosen. And in modern society, this primal instinct hasn't disappeared. It's just wearing a suit, or hiding behind a phone screen, or speaking in few, carefully weighted words. This is why you may have noticed, the moment you back off, she leans in. The moment you pull away, her imagination begins to write entire volumes about who you are, what you feel, what you must be hiding. And that imagined version of you, it's better than the real one, because she made it, she controls it. This is why so many emotionally intense women fall hardest for the emotionally unavailable man, because he becomes a canvas for everything she cannot say out loud: desire, rage, shame. He becomes the father who never held her, the ex who disappeared, the teacher who once praised her and never looked back. She doesn't love you, she loves what your silence allows. The therapist in our story understood this. He never tried to prove his care, never filled the silence with validation, because he knew the moment he did, she'd stop imagining, and once the fantasy dies, so does the bond. You're not taught this, you're taught to be open, direct, available, but that's not always what creates connection. Sometimes the most powerful bond is built on the ache of what's missing. You've been lied to, told that women want emotional availability above all else, that if you just communicate enough, express enough, love enough, she will stay. But your own life betrays this advice. You've watched her lose interest the moment you opened up, watched her pull away just when you thought things were finally honest. You asked yourself what you did wrong. You were too available, not too kind, not too good, too understood. You removed the space in which her desire could breathe. You gave her answers when what she needed was tension. You gave her presence when her unconscious needed mystery. This is not cruelty, it's psychology. Because when you overexpress, you destroy the projection. You collapse the story she was writing about you. And when the story dies, the obsession dies with it. You've seen it. The man who speaks in careful pauses, who doesn't rush to text back, who disappears just long enough to stir doubt, then reappears without explanation. He's not better than you, he's less explained than you, and in that void she fills in the gaps with fantasies far more seductive than reality. That's why Freud warned, the more a man tries to explain his love, the more a woman begins to doubt it, because the unconscious doesn't respond to evidence, it responds to implication, to gaps, to the ache of the unfinished. So what do? You stop trying to convince her. You stop explaining yourself. You stop treating your emotions like a resume. You learn restraint, not out of manipulation, but out of respect for your own gravity. When you don't rush to respond, you create space for her anxiety. And anxiety, if calibrated correctly, is the birthplace of obsession. Not chaos, not cruelty, just mystery. Think of it like a fire. You don't smother it with attention. You feed it sparingly, just enough to let it burn on its own. The more a woman feels compelled to figure you out, the more she thinks about you. And the more she thinks about you, the more her psyche bonds to the question, not the answer. It's not about becoming distant or cold. It's about becoming opaque, not unreadable,
just unread. Let her imagination do the work. You'll feel the urge to explain, to clarify your feelings, to say, "I'm not playing games." But you must understand, nature is the original game, and the one who survives is not the one who expresses the most, but the one who moves least when baited. Let her reach, let her imagine, let her chase, because if she obsesses over you, she will never fully possess you, and that's the state the unconscious finds irresistible. You're not cold, you're contained, you're not unavailable, you're measured. You don't need to manipulate women, you just need to understand them. Understand the echo chamber of their early wounds. Understand the gravity of what's withheld. This isn't about power, it's about pattern, and when you learn to hold still in the right moment, you become the unfinished story she has to finish. But she never will, and that's why she stays. So don't explain your silence, let it speak for you, because the men who are chased are not the loudest, not the most honest, not the most available. They are the ones who understand this. What she imagines will always be more addictive than what you say, and now that you know this, you can stop chasing approval and become the question she can't stop answering.